district in Missouri, Dale Hurl. Thank you so much for being here. Can you just describe kind of what challenges you're facing with teachers right now and why you decided to go this route?
Really, it's more than just teachers. It's staff in general. So bus drivers, honestly, that may be our biggest need right now, not just our school district, but any schooling system right now across the country, paraprofessionals, but certainly we are looking at the teacher shortage. And, we've been fortunate here in the Independent School District. We are a first-tier suburban community directly east of Kansas City. We have a little more than 14,000 students K through 12. So we've been fortunate through many years that our retention has always been better than the state average. But what we have noticed is that fewer and fewer applicants, because the state of Missouri is graduating about 25% fewer, I'll say, kids from our universities that are going into education than what they did a decade ago.
Oh, wow. That many fewer college graduates are looking to become teachers out of the gate.
Yes. And then you couple that with 45% of teachers in Missouri leave the profession within their first 3 years of coming out of college. 55% leave the profession within 5 years. So now you have people leaving the profession, you have fewer individuals going into teaching, and then you throw COVID into all of this, which led to more teacher burnout. So now you have a real serious problem that superintendents saw this coming a decade ago, but it just became so much more severe due to COVID. The plan really is not about saving money, and I know that may be the case in some school districts. This is all about attracting and retaining staff.
So what is the plan now then? Like, our kids are only going to go to school, 4 days a week there?
It would be a 4-day week. We would have Mondays off. Now, there would be some weeks where we would have school on Monday, such as around Thanksgiving or any sort of holiday break. We would have throughout the school year 155 student calendar days, where our current calendar is 170 days, but we are adding 35 minutes onto each day. So our instructional time is approximately the same.
But wait, salary does make a difference with teachers, right? Like, if you could pay them more, you'd imagine more would come. Or are more of them telling you, no, I would really just work a 4-day week. That's the most important thing to me.
That's what we heard time and time again.
Really?
It's more than about money. Throwing money at the problem, even though it would be nice, I don't believe that's going to solve it, because there's more things than just the money situation and what we pay teachers. It's quality of life, that work-life balance. And so, with the plan that we have going 4 days a week, so Tuesday through Friday, we are going to have a number of academic opportunities for our students. We're trying to address some of the learning loss that happened through COVID on the Mondays, as well as academic enrichment. So teachers, if they wish to, they won't have to, could sign up to do additional things like tutoring and teaching, what we call Learning League. That's our enrichment program. So they could earn additional money if they wish to.
Yeah, and let's talk about learning loss, because I think if I'm a parent in your district, aren't I thinking, I'm sorry, there's fewer hours in the classroom now? How is my kid supposed to be able to learn at the same rate as if they were there for 5 days a week?
That's a great question. And if you look at the research, as long as school districts keep the same number of instructional hours throughout the school term, so we are adding 35 minutes onto our day, you don't see the loss in academic performance. You'll see some studies that show it actually increases a little bit and some that show that it decreases a little, but overall there's not a great academic indicator that they do lose that performance.
What about childcare? Also, such an important part of your job is taking kids off the hands of parents who need to go to work. How does that get affected if now there's all of a sudden 3-day weekends every week forever?
So we are going to provide childcare here in the ISD. Now, parents do pay for that. So we know we'll be able to handle that. But what we have done to make it as affordable for parents as we can, we actually decreased our childcare from $45 a day down to $30 to make it more affordable. And then we have our before and after school programs, which we charged $100 a week. And since it'll only be 4 days, it'll be $80 a week. So,
but I'm talking about on the Monday when the kids don't have school. What's a parent supposed to do with their kid that day?
Well, we have childcare that day.
Okay.
So they could bring them in for childcare on those Mondays if they so choose.
Right, but at a cost to them, it sounds like. What is the template for this? Because I'm sure You can't be the only school district right now considering drastic changes, right? It sounds like this has become a nationwide issue. You guys are pushing the envelope in some ways, but I'm sure you talk to other superintendents. What are the options here?
Well, it's more widespread than most people know. So in the state of Missouri, we have over 140 school districts that are currently on a 4-day week.
Really?
So more than 25%. But we would be by far the largest school district in the state. But there are districts in other states that are even larger than us that are currently on a 4-day week. Brighton, Colorado is a good example. We spent a lot of time talking to them. They have over 20,000 students, and they're outside of the Denver metropolitan area. You know, for us, it's been interesting. You know, we're doing this to attract and retain teachers. We brought this before our school board in August. From October 1st until last week, our applications are up almost 40% over last year. I do believe it is accomplishing what we'd hoped, which is to attract teachers. And, you know, we're excited about it. There's a lot of work that we still have to do, but I do know this has sent reverberations throughout the state, just because we are so much larger than what you typically see. And I've had large school districts, my size or even bigger, already reach out to me today wanting to come visit and talk to us about our journey so far, because since we've taken the plunge and said we're going to do it, they are considering it within their school district.
Wow. So not inconceivable that a lot of parents maybe should consider it a real possibility that this could become a more accepted idea in more and more schools across the country. Dale Hurl, superintendent for the Independent School District in Missouri. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Next up on Start Here, it's called The Gray Zone, and a ceasefire was declared while our team went inside. We go to Ukraine after the break.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine, close to the front line.
here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
After an extraordinary news-making year, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
As of today, in a big way, we have inaugurated abcnews.com.
A lot has changed in our world since Peter made that announcement. But what hasn't changed is the commitment to groundbreaking reporting and innovation at abcnews.com. And here's to everything ahead.
The prisoner swap for the WNBA star Brittany Griner really showed the urgency that these diplomatic trades can have, and how ruthless Russia can be when it's got a prisoner it thinks holds value.
If any country decides that we have somebody in our possession that they want back, they could just obviously arrest anybody and think that we would negotiate them away.
Well, Russia has untold numbers of prisoners at its disposal right now. Not just foreign nationals it detains at the Moscow airport, but entire cities worth of people in Ukraine. Residents encircled, then trapped behind enemy lines, suddenly at the mercy of Russian troops. There are swaps for these types of prisoners as well. And while journalists have had very little access to the front of this war so far, yesterday something extraordinary happened. Ukrainian authorities told ABC's foreign correspondent Tom Sufi-Burridge that they were about to go to the front lines to bring back prisoners, which included an American citizen, and then to travel with the man who had just been released. Tom Sufi-Burridge joins us now from the southern Ukrainian city of Zaporizhia. Tom, we've heard about these Americans who ignore governmental advice and they go over to Ukraine to fight, but then you got American citizens who are just kind of trapped by a war that suddenly sprang up around them. It sounds like this American was one of those people, right? What can you tell us here?
Yeah, so right, Swedi Murakezi from Minnesota moved to Ukraine, into Kherson, actually, the city in the south, not far from Zaporizhia, where I'm speaking to you from, in 2020. He was working in cryptocurrency. It was his home, Kherson. And when the invasion started, like for everyone else living in Ukraine, his world was turned upside down. He says he went out to change the oil in his car and Russian soldiers took an interest in him. Suddenly he was in prison. Later they then found photos of him from the time when he used to serve in the US Air Force. And he says during his time in captivity, he was in Russian prisons for about 4 months, he says. Swedi Murakazi eventually gets released by the Russians. He then basically was residing in the biggest Russian-occupied city in eastern Ukraine called Donetsk. It's a city I know quite well. I went there during, effectively, the Russian occupation years ago. And he was residing in that city. According to Ukrainian officials, he was staying in a kind of safe place, a kind of residency where he was keeping a low profile. The Ukrainians were then sort of negotiating effectively his release. Wind the clock forward to yesterday when this all played out.
Well, and Tom, I mean, as much as we've heard about the front lines and as much as we've heard about these kind of ever-shifting borders, in effect, between Ukraine's actual land and what Russia has moved in on and invaded, we haven't had a ton of reporters who have been in that space. I mean, you were there as part of what, like a convoy that's going to take people off of, like, out of Russian custody?
Yeah, so we basically were in a convoy of vehicles with Ukrainian military intelligence. They were the people basically negotiating this swap with the Russians. You're just about to go in and get Swedi out. How complicated are these missions? Andriy saying 64 Ukrainian prisoners, part of a swap. Basically, we went in this convoy, went through multiple Ukrainian checkpoints on the way down into the grey zone. The grey zone is effectively a term for the area right by the front lines where the fighting's normally happening. And what happened yesterday is that the Russians and the Ukrainians organised a ceasefire, a 2-hour window during which this exchange had to take place. And it did. We basically went almost to the point where the actual exchange took place. We were a mile down the road under a bridge, effectively. The Ukrainian military intelligence team left us there. These guys are from Ukrainian military intelligence. Them and their colleagues are going in now to make the swap. They then went up the road. Within about 15 minutes or so, they came back down the road in their ambulance and other vehicles with Swedi Murakazi.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on getting out.
Thank you. I'm very grateful, yes.
I bet you are. Relieved.
Yes, really.
He was calm, he was relaxed. He said he was just relieved to get out. He said he felt trapped in that area of Russian-occupied eastern Ukraine where he was effectively living.
I felt quite trapped. I wasn't sure where things were moving.
And he said the reason he couldn't get out before was that he didn't have his US passport. When he was released from prison, he no longer had his documents, and he said that's why he was effectively in limbo, living there, and eventually the Ukrainians got him out.
Well, and for somebody who's then spent time in what become these like Russian-controlled jails, what is that reality like at this point? Did he tell you?
Well, I mean, he was sometimes staying with other U.S. prisoners. I mean, people might remember about Alex Druki and Andy Quinn, two U.S. veterans.
What was it like hearing your friend screaming in pain? I mean, it's awful because I know he's in pain, but at least I knew he was alive. You know, it was good and bad at the same time.
They've since been released by the Russians in a prisoner swap too, but at one point the three men were all in the same cell, effectively. They were living together. I mean, Swedi Murakazi talked about how they had like a loaf of bread a month to share. I mean, he said that they were given other food, like oatmeal every day. He said sometimes, though, it was inedible.
The worst part for me was just hearing other people screaming, hearing women screaming, women being tortured.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about being tortured. He said that basically the Russians would sometimes attach wires to his hands and leave them there for 15 seconds at a time while he was electrocuted. He said he was punched in the face, punched in the stomach.
You don't know what to do, you don't know what to, because you tell them everything, but whatever you say, they just say, no, you're lying. I'm saying, no, I'm telling you the truth,
Well, and all this makes me wonder, Tom, like what the next few weeks and months are going to look like, because we had been told that after Ukraine recaptured its port city of Kherson, that should be it for a while. You can expect the weather to get way too cold. These sides have just been battered to the point of exhaustion. There's going to be this kind of stalemate, not a ceasefire, but like a stalemate. That no longer looks like it's the case, right? We've heard about weapons changing hands. Russia seems to strike Ukraine whenever they think there might be an offensive to kind of put them on the back heel. What is about to go down now?
Well, look, the major developments this week is that the US looks poised to provide Ukraine with Patriot anti-air defense missile systems, and that would be a major step up. The Ukrainians have been asking for these systems for months. The US now appearing to have kind of made the decision based on these relentless Russian strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure. Millions of people sometimes living in the dark and without heating as the temperatures plunge below zero. So that's one area of the war. The other side is that really fighting continues. I mean, it's hot, the conflict. The thinking is that they're preparing the groundwork for an offensive. It's hard to say when that will take place, but maybe in the coming weeks or months.
Yeah, Tom Sufi-Burridge with this exclusive access that we haven't seen so far. Tom in Zaporizhia, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brad.
You've probably heard of the phrase pink tax, this idea that in a country where lots of necessities are tax-free, like some clothes and groceries, somehow feminine hygiene products aren't. But money is not the only cost when it comes to this huge industry of feminine hygiene. It also turns out there's a growing cost to the environment. And while you could say that about lots of products could stand to be more environmentally friendly, there are very few families of products that are used by billions of people around the world. ABC's Eva Pilgrim has been covering this topic, which so often goes uncovered because it's considered icky. And Eva, it sounds like that ick factor is actually part of the issue here.
Yeah, when you're talking about your period, it makes people uncomfortable, right? We as little girls were taught to not talk about our periods.
Peggy, of course I can't go swimming. You know I've got the curse.
If you had your period, you were supposed to very quietly, discreetly go to the bathroom to deal with it. It wasn't something to be celebrated and certainly not openly discussed.
No, stop it. I'm menstruating.
Abby, you know what? You're menstruating, okay, but do you have to say it?
When you factor in that idea of periods being icky, it keeps people from using products that could be reused, right? The most environmentally friendly product would be a reusable one.
I won't get super detailed about this, but I use a Diva cup because, like, save money, save the planet, save my vagina.
But the idea of touching your own period blood or cleaning a product that needs to be used over and over again, that freaks people out.
And it does make me nervous because it's literally a cup to collect your period blood. And that just like as a science makes me nervous.
And so they don't want to use those types of products. So what we're left with are products that need to be disposed of. And a lot of times those products aren't environmentally friendly.
But how big does that environmental impact end up being, though? Because, like, lots of stuff gets dumped in landfills. I could imagine someone being like, well, you know, these are small items. Who cares?
Except for the fact that, you know, half the population is female. A lot of people menstruate. When you think about all of those people have a period once a month, that's multiple pads and tampons in a day that all end up in landfills. I mean, you're talking about millions and millions of these products that just sit in a landfill and they don't go anywhere. It's a real problem.
But generally, a typical average is about 240 per year, whether it be a tampon or a sanitary pad.
Dr. Susan Powers has been looking into just how much waste we create with these period products.
If your product is made with a lot of polyesters and polyethylenes and plastic layers, those do not degrade. Plastic does not degrade. Over hundreds of years, it breaks down into little tiny pieces. And that's the problem with microplastics that we have, and the fact that you are, consuming a credit card worth of plastic every year just based on the little tiny things that you can't even see.
Tampax tampons protect differently than a pad, so you feel cleaner. And feeling cleaner is more comfortable.
One of the things that's uniquely American is this idea of an applicator. If you go to some other countries, there's no tampon applicator.
No applicator is the best. Cardboard applicator is better than a plastic applicator.
But because women, specifically in the United States, have been conditioned to think period blood is so icky, they don't want to touch it. And so there are applicators that have been created, and then those applicators are not environmentally friendly. So
we've created a plastic thing to help you avoid the thing that you've been told to fear.
Exactly.
What is it wrapped in? How is it packaged? Is it individually wrapped and yet more plastic?
It's this question of how do you create something that allows people to feel comfortable with this monthly time that they have that comes like clockwork, but also works and that they'll use. That's the big question. What is the product that people will use?
Yeah, what is the next step here then?
We talked to this young woman named Nadia Okamoto. She's the founder of August.
On a cultural level, I think the goal of August is to just reimagine periods to be powerful.
And she's on a mission to change the way people feel about periods.
And also to push the whole industry to be as sustainable, transparent, and ethical as possible. I think because of the period stigma, there hasn't been the same level of accountability for brands in this space than there has been in other spaces. We can barely get the industry to use red liquid or real period blood or to say the word period.
She dresses up as a period fairy, giving out products to people at big events.
Wait, what pads do you use? I use the August liners and overnight.
She is often seen with a pad on the front of her clothes outside so people know if she's on her period. She's tried to make period products more environmentally friendly.
Our pads are biodegradable within 12 months, and other pads usually take between 500 and 800 years.
But she's very open about the fact that as it is right now, it's nearly impossible to create a product that doesn't have some level of plastic in it just because of the nature of what the product has to do.
We were looking at applicators and we say, well, should we do the most sustainable option, which is a cardboard applicator? But when you tell menstruators like, oh, this is a cardboard applicator, we're all kind of like, it's not comfortable. It just was also going to be something that was going to be a bit harder to get people to use.
I saw that they have a plastic applicator that they say in their materials that is recyclable. And I think that cardboard or no applicator is a far better choice because we always talk about, yes, plastics are recyclable and they've got their little triangle on them. Well, it's not recyclable everywhere.
The most environmentally friendly product is one that you can reuse. And she hopes that one day they can sell a product that is like that people will buy. But as it is right now, people don't want to buy that product, at least not here in the United States.
It's fascinating to me when cultural questions, cultural norms affect not just how we feel about ourselves, about our neighbors, but that those feelings then shape the physical world around us. Like because people feel a certain way about tampons, that leads to this direct impact on our local landfills. Just great reporting, Eva. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And one last thing. Next week, a new measure in California is set to take effect that will ban flavored tobacco. It will be illegal to sell anywhere in the state. This measure had been appealed by the tobacco company R.J. Reynolds, which makes Newports, but the Supreme Court declined to take up their final appeal, meaning this is done. In California, this is happening. That is a seismic shift for smokers in this country. R.J. Reynolds said flavors like menthols account for close to a third of the entire American tobacco market. But researchers say there's ample evidence that flavors do a great job at hooking younger customers.
The youth epidemic on flavored e-cigs is continuing. More than 2.5 million middle and high school students in the country reported current e-cigarette use in 2022.
Now, if you want to talk about restrictions, forget the U.S. for a second. Let's go to New Zealand.
The ayes are 76, the noes are 43. The motion is agreed to.
Earlier this week, the New Zealand Parliament passed a bill that will eventually ban cigarettes entirely, full stop. The basic rule is if you smoke now, you're okay to keep doing so. But if you're currently under the age of 18, you will never be able to legally buy cigarettes in New Zealand. In the coming years, the minimum age will just keep going up until no one's old enough to smoke. What's interesting here is this law excludes vaping products, which are much more popular among young people. In fact, very few people in New Zealand smoke cigarettes anymore at all. The group that uses combustible cigarettes the most are indigenous Maori people. Health advocates say it's no coincidence that Maori's life expectancy is currently shorter than anyone else's in New Zealand.
Our projections show the New Zealand European population is likely to achieve smoke-free status by 2025. But Māori won't achieve this goal for decades if we don't act now.
But is there a difference between trying to make people healthier and criminalizing a cultural norm? Take menthol cigarettes back here in the U.S. Kids do use them more often, that's true, but they're also overwhelmingly favored by Black Americans. The CDC says 8 out of 10 Black smokers prefer these products that are increasingly deemed illegal. Could laws like this prevent more people from getting hooked? Sure, but as states get more restrictive, there could be more nuanced conversations about race, culture, and health. Take a deep breath. I remember when I moved to New York and cigarettes had just been outlawed in bars, like 10 years after California did it. Everyone in New York was convinced, like, this will never work. No one's going to go to bars anymore. Look at us now. Like, I can actually go out without feeling like my skin is going to peel off the next morning. Start here tomorrow. Hit that follow button for a new episode every morning. I'm Brad Milkey. See you tomorrow.
With so much at stake, so much on the line,